In recent years, Brazil has been facing a concerning escalation of extreme heat, but in 2025, the scenario has reached unprecedented levels. The National Institute of Meteorology, INMET, and the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MCTI, confirmed the record frequency of heat waves across almost all regions of the country. This phenomenon has ceased to be an exception and has become a climatic routine, with episodes that are longer, more intense, and increasingly closer to one another. For those over 60 years old, this new climate pattern is not just an inconvenience, it is a direct threat to health and survival. Heat waves increase mortality due to cardiovascular, respiratory, and kidney problems, often silently, without the population realizing the true extent of the risk. What makes this change so dangerous is that the human body's natural adaptation has limits, and 2025 data shows that we are already testing those limits daily. In several capitals, average temperatures exceeded historical values by as much as 5 degrees Celsius, while the number of tropical nights, those in which the minimum temperature does not drop below 25 degrees Celsius, has doubled compared to the past decade. Night heat, once rare, has become constant, preventing the body from recovering from the thermal stress of the previous day. This creates a situation of accumulated exhaustion and dehydration, especially dangerous for the elderly, who already face greater difficulties regulating body temperature. In addition, the phenomenon of urban heat islands further amplifies the situation. Densely populated neighborhoods, with few trees and an excess of concrete and asphalt, can record differences of up to 7 degrees Celsius compared to nearby green areas. This means that even if official forecasts indicate high temperatures for those living in big cities, the reality is usually even more severe. The result is a cycle of relentless heat, where fans and air conditioners often become the only barrier between survival and the devastating effects of hypothermia. This new climate pattern also puts pressure on already overloaded healthcare systems. Hospitals and clinics see during heat waves a sudden surge in patients with exhaustion, severe dehydration, and decompensation of chronic diseases. Elderly people, who often take several daily medications, present even more delicate responses, as some drugs can heighten the risks of heat by altering blood pressure regulation or the body's ability to eliminate fluids. Endless heat, therefore, is not just an environmental issue. It is a public health crisis that requires preparation, information, and practical action protocols. Science already makes it clear that this scenario is not temporary. Global warming, driven by climate change, establishes a new normal in which heat waves will be increasingly long, intense, and lethal. For the elderly population, it is crucial to understand that this is not just about enduring discomfort, but about adopting preventive strategies capable of reducing the risks of fatal complications. Thus, acknowledging the reality of the numbers and accepting that extreme heat has become part of daily life is the first step toward organizing, adjusting habits, and protecting life. Understanding why extreme heat strikes people over 60 so severely is essential to building any survival plan. The human body, as it ages, gradually loses the ability to regulate its own temperature, a process known as thermoregulation. In practice, this means that when the ambient temperature rises abruptly or remains high for many hours, an elderly person's body takes longer to perceive the danger and react efficiently. While young adults sweat quickly and intensely to release heat, the elderly often sweat less, dehydrate faster, and have more difficulty dissipating accumulated heat. The result is a silent buildup of thermal stress that can quickly evolve into heat exhaustion or even heat stroke, often without clear warning signs in the early stages. Another critical point is the presence of chronic diseases, which are common in this age group. Hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular conditions, and kidney problems already demand much from the body under normal circumstances. When combined with extreme heat, these conditions become even more unstable, raising the risk of sudden decompensation. A heart that already works under constant strain may fail when confronted with the dilation of blood vessels caused by heat. Kidneys that already filter with difficulty may struggle even more with the accelerated loss of fluids and minerals through sweating. These factors explain why during heat waves, hospitalization rates among the elderly spike and mortality rises significantly. Continuous use medications represent another invisible risk. Diuretics, beta blockers, antidepressants, and even some common painkillers interfere with the way the body handles heat and fluids. This creates a dangerous side effect. While the person believes they are following their treatment correctly, they may unknowingly be increasing their vulnerability to thermal stress. This combination, advanced age, chronic illnesses, and multiple medications, makes up what specialists call the triple threat during heat waves. For those over 60, each additional degree in the ambient temperature represents a strain that the body cannot always withstand. Beyond physiological factors, there are also social aspects that make the elderly more exposed. Many live alone, in poorly ventilated homes or without access to cooling devices. Others have reduced mobility, making it difficult to seek help or move to cooler places such as community centers or health clinics. There is also the issue of perception. Many underestimate the signs of their own bodies, believing the heat to be just temporary discomfort, when in reality, their system is already collapsing. This difficulty in recognizing the initial symptoms is one of the reasons why mortality among the elderly rises so quickly during heat waves. Thus, when we say that the elderly are the invisible target of heat waves, it is no exaggeration. It is a combination of vulnerabilities that silently add up, creating a trap where danger sets in without warning. Extreme heat does not need to reach record highs to be lethal. It only needs to persist for a few hours in inadequate conditions of hydration, ventilation, and care. Understanding these vulnerabilities is the first step toward acting in advance, protecting health and preventing tragedies that can be avoided with simple measures, but applied correctly and consistently. When the thermometer rises and the forecast confirms the arrival of a heat wave, each hour of the day takes on a specific weight regarding the health of older adults. That is why experts in public health and climatology have been advocating action protocols based on a 24-hour timeline, transforming an ordinary day into a true survival script. The central idea is simple: to recognize that the human body reacts differently to heat at each stage of the day, and by adjusting routines according to this survival clock, it is possible to drastically reduce the risks of heat exhaustion, dehydration, and even fatal events. This approach, used in plans by the Ministry of Health and adapted from international experiences, organizes the 24 hours into critical blocks where each decision can be decisive. In the early morning hours, the goal is to prepare the body to face the heat that will intensify throughout the day. This means hydrating properly upon waking, consuming light foods rich in water, and keeping the house closed to prevent hot air from entering. During the morning until around 10 a.m., the body can still cope better with the temperature increase, but this is the period when strategic adjustments, such as organizing the day's medication and preparing fresh meals in advance, make a difference. This anticipation avoids physical exertion or unnecessary exposure to the sun during the most critical hours. Between late morning and mid-afternoon, the scenario changes completely. This is the most dangerous period of the heat wave, when temperatures reach their peak and the risk of decompensation rises significantly. The protocol recommends reducing physical activity to a minimum, staying in ventilated or air-conditioned environments, and increasing hydration at regular intervals, even without feeling thirsty. For older adults who take medication, this is the moment of greatest attention, as heat can alter the effect of drugs in the body. Small signs such as dizziness, unusual fatigue, or excessively hot skin should be seen as immediate warning alarms. By late afternoon, the body has already accumulated hours of thermal stress. At this stage, measures such as cooling the environment with damp towels, lukewarm baths, or the use of fans become essential. Contrary to what many believe, the drop in temperature at dusk is not always enough to relieve the body, since heat accumulated inside houses may remain trapped much longer. Therefore, cross-ventilation, opening opposite windows to allow air circulation, should begin when the outside temperature becomes lower than the indoor temperature. This transition prepares the body to face the night, which during heat waves can be just as dangerous as midday. The night hours are the last link in this survival clock. If the minimum temperature does not fall below 25 degrees Celsius, the body loses the chance to recover, increasing the risk of complications the following day. Older adults sleeping in stuffy rooms face continuous dehydration and fragmented sleep, which further weakens the body. That is why simple measures such as wearing light clothing, keeping bottles of water nearby, and sleeping in ventilated environments can make the difference between surviving the heat wave safely or waking up already debilitated. The survival clock is not just a metaphor. It is a practical guide that turns every hour of the day into a strategic moment of care, putting routine at the service of health and life preservation. The first 6 hours of a heat wave are the foundation of the entire survival protocol. It is during this initial period, in the early hours of the day, that the body is most receptive to preparing against the thermal stress ahead. Upon waking, the absolute priority must be hydration. Drinking just a glass of water is not enough. It is recommended to consume between 300 and 500 milliliters of fluids early in the morning, preferably fresh water or light, caffeine-free teas. This initial replacement helps correct the fluid loss of the night, when the body already perspires without direct perception. Many older adults wake up with mild dehydration signs, such as a dry mouth or dizziness upon standing, and if this is not corrected, it can compromise the entire rest of the day. Another fundamental point is food. The first meals should be light and rich in watery fruits, such as watermelon, melon, oranges, and papaya, along with natural yogurts and easy-to-digest foods. Eating heavy meals early, like fatty meats or ultra-processed foods, overloads the digestive system and raises internal temperature precisely when it should be spared. In addition, having meals prepared in advance prevents older adults from needing to use the stove or oven during the hottest hours of the day, when kitchen heat can become unbearable. The morning routine should also include household care. Closing curtains, blinds, and sun-facing windows early prevents accumulated heat from entering. Placing damp towels in strategic spots and keeping buckets or basins of water in small rooms helps increase relative humidity, reducing respiratory discomfort caused by dry heat. At this time, before the sun reaches its peak, the house can be transformed into a cooler shelter for the rest of the day. Small measures taken early bring great benefits when temperatures exceed 35 degrees Celsius. Morning is also the best time for activities requiring physical effort, such as bathing, house cleaning, light walking, or quick medical appointments. After 10 a.m., the risk already begins to rise, and leaving home may expose older adults to intense solar radiation. For this reason, specialists recommend that any essential outings be done early in the day, always with light clothing, wide-brimmed hats, sunscreen, and a water bottle at hand. This planning reduces the need for exposure during the most dangerous hours, which extend until late afternoon. The first 6 hours are also decisive for medication control. Many older adults use drugs that directly affect blood pressure, kidneys, or heart rate. Taking these medications at regular times but aligned with proper hydration can reduce the risks of side effects during heat. For example, those taking diuretics must reinforce fluid intake in the morning to avoid sudden drops in blood pressure throughout the day. This simple care, often neglected, can be the dividing line between a stable day and a physical collapse caused by extreme heat. The first 6 hours, therefore, act as an initial shield. During this time, food is organized, hydration is strengthened, the home environment is prepared, and the pace of the day is defined. When carried out properly, these measures reduce the risk of heat wave-related complications by up to 40%, according to recommendations from the Ministry of Health. The secret lies in treating the morning not as an ordinary routine, but as the first stage of a strategic survival plan that protects not only the body but also the mind and safety of older adults facing increasingly severe temperatures. Between late morning and the arrival of midday, the risk of complications increases silently, because it is during this interval that the ambient temperature begins to rise rapidly and the bodies of older adults already enter a state of alert. This period, which runs approximately from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., should be treated as a critical moment of transition between the preparation carried out in the early hours of the day and the intense heat phase of the afternoon. The key to crossing it safely lies in maintaining an organized routine that prioritizes hydration, proper nutrition, and as little physical effort as possible. At this stage, preventive care becomes a vital barrier against thermal collapse. Hydration, which began early, needs to be reinforced at this time. Specialists recommend small regular intakes of water every 30 to 40 minutes, even in the absence of thirst. The elderly body, due to the physiological changes of aging, no longer sends clear signs of dehydration, and waiting for thirst can be dangerous. In addition to water, Options such as coconut water or homemade solutions with a pinch of salt and sugar can help maintain mineral balance, reducing the risk of cramps, dizziness, and low blood pressure. One important detail: caffeinated beverages such as coffee or black tea, as well as soft drinks, should be avoided, as they increase fluid loss. Nutrition between morning and midday must be light, fresh, and planned. Salads with greens, raw vegetables, and sliced fruits are ideal, as are small portions of lean proteins that are easy to digest, such as fish or boiled chicken. The goal is not to fill the stomach, but to provide sufficient energy without raising the body's internal temperature. Ultra-processed foods, packaged snacks, and greasy dishes should be discarded at this time of day, as they demand greater digestive effort and can aggravate the sensation of heat. Keeping meals prepared in the refrigerator since early morning helps avoid using the stove or oven, which turn the kitchen into a true greenhouse during heat waves. During this interval, it is also the right time to adjust the home environment to withstand the peak temperature ahead. Sun-facing windows should remain closed and covered with light curtains. If fans are available, they should be positioned strategically, crossing the airflow between two openings. Damp towels or frozen bottles can be placed in front of the fan to cool the air even more. Another effective measure is to keep buckets of water on the floor of main rooms, increasing air humidity and reducing the sensation of stuffiness. Small adjustments such as these can lower indoor temperature by up to 3 degrees Celsius, which makes a huge difference for vulnerable older adults. The morning to midday period should also be free of unnecessary exertion. Any activity involving outdoor travel under the sun, heavy cleaning, climbing stairs, or carrying weight must be postponed. This is the moment to remain in relative rest, sitting or lying in a cool place, saving bodily energy to face the afternoon heat. Many older adults believe they can take advantage of this time to run quick errands, but that is precisely the mistake that increases cases of exhaustion and heat stroke. On the contrary, the rule is simple. This is the time to retreat, care for the body, and preserve energy. Therefore, the late morning to midday interval works as the last preparation barrier before the peak of heat. Continuous hydration, light meals, and avoiding physical exertion are fundamental pillars to crossing this period without harm. When adequately protected during this time frame, an older person's body faces the most intense part of the heat wave with more resilience and lower risk of severe complications. Treating these hours as an essential chapter of the survival protocol is what guarantees safety until the next phase, when danger reaches its maximum point. This is the most dangerous period of the entire day during a heat wave. Between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., the combination of intense solar radiation, maximum temperatures, and low humidity creates an environment where the human body, especially after the age of 60, faces almost unbearable thermal stress. During this interval, the priority must be absolute, staying indoors, maintaining constant hydration, and avoiding any sun exposure. The most common mistake made by older adults is believing that just a few minutes outside will not cause harm, but even a short walk under this extreme heat can trigger dizziness, low blood pressure, or even heat stroke. The official recommendation is clear. Between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m., older adults must remain at rest in a cool and ventilated place, treating this period as a true safety blockade. Hydration must be even stricter at this stage. The ideal is to keep water bottles nearby in every room, to encourage small intakes every 20 to 30 minutes. During this extreme heat interval, the body loses fluids even without visible sweating, especially in dry environments. Preparing pitchers with fresh water, slices of fruit, or even ice cubes helps make the habit easier to maintain. Natural isotonic solutions, such as water with a pinch of salt and sugar, can also be used in cases of fatigue or cramps. The secret is not to wait for thirst. Those who wait for the symptom are already in the process of dehydration. Keeping the house cool during this period is a challenge, but some practical measures work effectively. Heavy curtains or damp cloths hung over windows help block heat entry. Fans should run continuously, but it is important to remember they only move air and do not lower temperature. For that reason, they can be combined with wet towels, bowls of water, or frozen bottles placed in front of the blades. For those with air conditioning, it is recommended to keep the indoor climate between 24 and 26 degrees Celsius, avoiding very low settings that overstrain the appliance and create thermal shock when leaving the environment. During these critical hours, Meals must also be adapted. Hot, greasy, or heavy dishes increase internal heat production, while cold foods such as salads, fruits, and light snacks reduce digestive overload. Avoiding stove use altogether during this time is a smart strategy, since the heat released by burners and ovens can turn the kitchen into a suffocating space. Preparing food early or keeping cold portions ready in the fridge is the safest way to maintain energy without exposing the body to additional risks. It is also during this period that the first warning signs of hypothermia and heat exhaustion appear. Dizziness, headache, red and hot skin, excessive sweating followed by sudden dryness of the skin, extreme weakness, and even mental confusion. In older adults, these symptoms can quickly progress to loss of consciousness and circulatory collapse. Therefore, any indication must be treated as an emergency, alerting family members, neighbors, or health services. The 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. window is not just a dangerous interval, it is the decisive phase in which the body most needs total protection. Following the safety protocol during this period can mean the difference between surviving the heat wave safely or entering a state of serious risk. When the clock approaches 4 p.m., many older adults believe the worst has already passed, but this is a misleading perception. Late afternoon carries a hidden risk. Even if the external temperature begins to gradually fall, the heat accumulated inside houses and apartments remains high, turning the home environment into a real oven. At this moment, smart cooling measures make all the difference. Opening windows strategically, only when the outside temperature is lower than the inside, creates what is known as cross-ventilation, allowing air circulation and pushing out the heat trapped in walls and furniture. If natural ventilation is not enough, the use of fans facing outward can help push hot air out while new flows of fresh air come in. This late afternoon transition is crucial to prevent nighttime heat from becoming unbearable. By the end of the afternoon, the body is already weakened after hours of thermal stress. That is why it is the ideal moment to reinforce hydration and replace electrolytes lost throughout the day. Cold soups, natural juices, and water-rich fruits such as watermelon and oranges can help restore energy without overloading the body. It is also important to avoid heavy or fatty meals, which increase the sensation of heat and slow digestion. This period should be seen as preparation for the night. The more balanced the body is when reaching bedtime, the lower the impact of continuous heat during the early morning hours. Another essential late afternoon strategy is the use of simple body cooling techniques. Lukewarm or cold showers help reduce internal temperature without causing thermal shock. Damp cloths applied to strategic points, such as the forehead, armpits, nape, and groin, act as an immediate cooling system, effectively lowering body temperature. Older adults with reduced mobility can keep basins of cold water near a chair or bed to bathe arms and legs during this period. These measures, when incorporated into daily routine, help prevent the body from accumulating excessive heat before nightfall. Late afternoon is also the time to adjust the home to ensure a less stifling sleep. Dark curtains should remain closed in rooms most exposed to the sun, while damp cloths can be placed on windows or doors to cool the incoming air. For those using fans, placing frozen water bottles in front of the airflow enhances cooling. If there is air conditioning, the ideal is to use it moderately during this period, lowering the temperature gradually so the body adapts before night. This preparation of the home environment is as important as hydration, as it ensures a night with fewer interruptions and greater chances of physical recovery. Therefore, late afternoon should be treated as the transition stage between the peak of the heat wave and the nighttime phase, which also carries significant risks. By caring for hydration, adjusting nutrition, adopting cooling techniques, and preparing the home for night, older adults create a protective shield against accumulated heat. It is not merely about temporary relief, but about a fundamental strategy to preserve health in a continuous cycle of high temperatures that no longer gives respite in many regions of Brazil. Late afternoon is therefore the time to rebuild strength to face the next challenge, the hot night that can compromise rest and the body's balance. Night, which should be a period of natural recovery for the body, becomes another challenge during heat waves. For older adults, the risk multiplies because it is precisely during sleep that the body needs to stabilize blood pressure, balance fluids, and repair essential functions. However, when the minimum temperature does not fall below 25 degrees Celsius, a phenomenon increasingly common in so-called tropical nights. The body cannot cool down, and the sensation of suffocation repeatedly interrupts rest. The result is a dangerous cycle: fragmented sleep, continuous dehydration, and accumulated fatigue, which make the elderly even more vulnerable the next day. This is why experts warn that hot nights can be just as lethal as scorching afternoons. To get through this critical period, the first step is to prepare the bedroom as a refuge. Windows should be opened only if the outside temperature is lower than the inside, creating natural ventilation. Otherwise, it is best to keep the environment closed and use fans combined with homemade techniques such as frozen bottles or damp towels placed in front of the airflow. This creates an immediate cooling sensation and helps lower the temperature around the bed. Another effective measure is to place damp cloths on the sides of the bed or on the floor, increasing relative humidity and reducing dryness in the airways. The body also needs specific care before sleep. A lukewarm or slightly cool shower, taken about 30 minutes before bedtime, helps lower core temperature and facilitates the onset of sleep. Light clothing, preferably cotton, allows better skin ventilation. The use of thin sheets instead of heavy blankets is essential, as is avoiding synthetic pillows that retain heat. For older adults who wake up frequently during the night, it is recommended to keep a water bottle at the bedside for small sips throughout sleep, preventing the silent progression of dehydration. Nutrition also influences sleep quality on hot nights. Light meals, consumed up to 2 hours before bedtime, reduce digestive effort and avoid raising internal body temperature. Cold soups, salads, and fruits are ideal options, while fatty dishes and alcoholic beverages should be avoided. Alcohol, besides dehydrating, disrupts the sleep cycle, worsening the sensation of exhaustion the next day. Another important point is to avoid stimulants such as coffee, black tea, or cola-based sodas, which further impair the body's ability to rest properly. Sleeping in a safe, cool, and prepared environment is not a luxury, but a survival measure during heat waves. Every detail, from bedding to hydration levels, makes a direct difference in protecting the body. For older adults who already face physiological limitations, these measures can drastically reduce the risk of worsening chronic diseases and ensure a minimally restorative night. Light and continuous sleep, even in adverse conditions, is what strengthens the body to face another day of extreme temperatures, preserving health and, in many cases, saving lives. During a heat wave, quickly recognizing warning signs can be the difference between a simple home intervention and a potentially fatal medical emergency. Older adults are especially vulnerable because they often show more subtle symptoms, which can be mistaken for common fatigue or temporary discomfort. However, ignoring these signs is a dangerous mistake, since the progression of heat exhaustion and heat stroke can be extremely rapid. That is why it is essential for family members, caregivers, and the elderly themselves to know in detail what the main warning signs are and how to act immediately when they appear. The first group of signs involves general changes in well-being: dizziness, persistent headache, unusual weakness, nausea, and extreme fatigue. These symptoms may indicate heat exhaustion, when the body can no longer balance fluids and internal temperature. Another common warning is excessive sweating at first, followed by a decrease or even absence of sweat, even under intense heat, a serious sign that the body's cooling system is failing. The skin, in such cases, may become red and hot, while the pulse speeds up, reflecting the heart's effort to maintain circulation. Neurological signs are even more dangerous. Mental confusion, slurred speech, disorientation, and excessive drowsiness should not be attributed only to age-related tiredness. These symptoms indicate that the brain is suffering from excessive heat, a condition that can quickly progress to loss of consciousness and seizures. For older adults already living with diseases such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, these signs may be difficult to distinguish, but any sudden change in behavior must be treated as an emergency. Heat stroke, the most severe stage of thermal stress, requires immediate medical attention, as it can cause irreversible damage to the central nervous system. Another critical point involves the cardiovascular system. Sudden drops in blood pressure, palpitations, shortness of breath, or chest pain during a heat wave are signs that the heart is overloaded. Extreme heat forces blood vessels to dilate and increases demands on the heart muscle. which is particularly dangerous for older adults with hypertension or a history of heart attack. In such situations, one should not wait to see if the condition improves on its own. The guideline is to seek medical care immediately. Every minute can make the difference in preventing fatal complications. In all these cases, the action protocol is clear. Take the older adult to a cool environment, offer small amounts of fluids, and apply rapid cooling techniques such as damp cloths on the forehead, armpits, and groin while waiting for medical help. The most common mistake is believing that the older person will recover on their own after resting, but the already weakened body is not always able to regain balance. This is why warning signs must be taken with utmost seriousness. Identifying them early and acting quickly is the key to reducing deaths during heat waves, turning knowledge into a real shield of protection for the elderly population. Little is said about this, but many medications commonly used by older adults significantly increase risks during heat waves. This is a critical issue because most people over 60 take daily medications for blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, anxiety, or chronic pain, without realizing that the effects of these substances can add to thermal stress. The result is a dangerous combination. While heat overloads the body, some medications reduce the body's ability to respond, leaving it even more vulnerable. Understanding these interactions is essential so that older adults, family members, and caregivers can protect themselves appropriately. One of the most delicate groups is diuretics, commonly used to treat hypertension and heart problems. These drugs increase fluid elimination from the body, something beneficial under normal conditions but risky on extremely hot days when dehydration is already an imminent threat. The older adult may lose excessive fluids and minerals, leading to low blood pressure, weakness, and even fainting. Another group of concern are beta blockers, also used in heart diseases. They reduce heart rate and make it harder for the body to speed up heartbeat in response to heat, limiting the natural defense against hypothermia. Psychiatric medications such as antidepressants and anxiolytics also present significant risks. Many of them affect the central nervous system and alter the perception of thirst or the ability to sweat. This means that the older adult may not feel the need to drink water even when dehydrated, or may sweat less, accumulating heat without noticing. Some antipsychotics used in dementia cases worsen this problem, making heat stroke a real risk. Anti-inflammatory drugs and common painkillers, in turn, can overload the kidneys, making it harder to eliminate toxins when the body is already stressed by dehydration. The risk is not only in the direct effect of the drugs, but also in polypharmacy, that is, the simultaneous use of multiple medications. This reality is very common among older adults and creates complex interactions where heat acts as a trigger for severe imbalances. For example, an older adult taking a diuretic, a beta blocker, and an antidepressant at the same time has a very reduced ability to cope with a heat wave, even when in a relatively cool environment. This vulnerability is further increased when there is no close medical follow-up or when the patient does not understand the impact of these medications on extremely hot days. Given this, specialists recommend that during heat waves, older adults stay in touch with their doctors to review dosages or receive specific guidance. In some cases, it may be necessary to adjust schedules, reinforce hydration, or monitor vital signs more frequently. It is essential not to interrupt medication on one's own, but rather to adopt support strategies to reduce risks. Knowledge about the relationship between medications and heat is one of the most neglected points in the public health debate, but it can save lives when incorporated into survival protocols. In a country where heat waves are already routine, this care must be a priority in every family. During a heat wave, the home environment can become both a refuge and a trap. For older adults who spend most of their time indoors, turning the house into a safe place against heat is not just comfort, it is survival. The concept of the cool house map is simple. Identify critical hotspots and apply quick, practical, and low-cost adjustments that can reduce indoor temperature by up to 5 degrees Celsius. This difference, although it may seem small, can mean preserving health on days when thermometers surpass 40 degrees Celsius outdoors. The secret is to act strategically with easy-to-apply and sustainable measures. The first adjustment involves blocking direct sunlight. Light-colored curtains, damp cloths hung over windows, and even cardboard or aluminum foil temporarily attached to exposed glass, can help reduce heat entry. The second step is to create cross-ventilation, opening opposite windows when the outside temperature is lower than the inside to allow air circulation and expel accumulated heat. The third adjustment is to position fans intelligently, facing outward at certain times to push hot air out, and inward at others when the night breeze begins to cool. Humidifying the environment is another key point. Buckets or basins of water placed around the house, wet towels hung in rooms, and even frozen bottles positioned in front of a fan increase the sensation of freshness and reduce respiratory discomfort. Placing natural plants in strategic spots also helps, as they release humidity and improve air quality. For bedrooms, it is recommended to use light bedding and cotton sheets, as well as to remove rugs and objects that retain heat. Small structural adaptations, such as painting exterior walls in light colors or installing reflective films on glass, also belong to the map. But even without major renovations, it is possible to create a significant difference. Another important adjustment is reorganizing rooms. Smaller spaces with less direct sun exposure should be prioritized as living areas during peak heat. In these rooms, fans, humidifiers, and simple cooling resources can be concentrated to maintain lower temperatures. If possible, moving a bed or resting chair to the coolest room in the house during a heat wave is a strategic decision. The bathroom can also serve as a relief point, with quick showers or damp towels readily available to cool the body at regular intervals. Finally, the cool house map should be visual and accessible. A printed checklist, posted on the fridge or living room wall, ensures that all steps are remembered and applied daily. This list can include simple tasks such as closing curtains in the morning, checking water buckets, repositioning fans, and preparing light clothing for the night. For older adults who live alone, this resource acts as a practical and constant guide, reducing forgetfulness in critical moments. With these 10 quick adjustments, the house ceases to be a risk and becomes the main ally in surviving heat waves, offering a safe and efficient shelter in the face of an increasingly severe climate. Proper hydration is the central axis of survival during heat waves, but it goes far beyond simply drinking large amounts of water. For older adults, the balance between water and minerals is crucial because the body at this age already has a reduced ability to regulate blood volume, blood pressure, and kidney function. On extremely hot days, losing fluids and electrolytes through sweating can cause not only fatigue, but also sudden drops in blood pressure, cramps, mental confusion, and in severe cases, circulatory failure. That is why the fundamental principle is hydrate constantly and intelligently, respecting the body's limits and needs. Water should be consumed in small amounts throughout the day, rather than in large volumes all at once. This prevents overloading the kidneys and ensures gradual absorption. For older adults taking diuretics or other medications that interfere with fluid balance, this care is even more essential. A good practice is to keep 300 to 500 ml bottles within reach in every room, encouraging frequent sips every 20 to 30 minutes. The most common mistake is waiting for thirst, but in aging, the sensation of thirst is less intense, which means the body may already be dehydrated when the person notices the symptom. The role of salt in this context is equally important. During intense sweating, the body loses not only water, but also sodium and potassium, which are essential for muscle contraction, heart rhythm, and blood pressure stability. Therefore, during heat waves, it is recommended to include small amounts of salt in meals, always with moderation and medical guidance for those with restrictions. A practical and homemade solution is to prepare hydration serum, 1 liter of filtered water, 1 level teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of sugar. This simple mixture helps quickly restore electrolytes and can be used in cases of fatigue, dizziness, or excessive sweating. Water and mineral-rich foods are also strategic allies. Fruits such as watermelon, melon, oranges, and pineapple provide natural hydration and nutrient replenishment. Raw vegetables, cold soups, and coconut water are other effective options. On the other hand, alcoholic beverages and sodas should be avoided, as they promote dehydration and increase kidney strain. It is also important to remember that even some teas and coffees, when consumed in excess, can worsen fluid loss. The key is to prioritize clear and natural liquids at regular intervals, keeping the body protected against thermal collapse. For older adults who already have kidney or heart disease, hydration must follow medical guidance even more closely, since both excess and lack of fluids can be dangerous. The secret lies in adapting routine to climate conditions, reinforcing hydration during heat waves, and monitoring warning signs such as swelling, shortness of breath, or sudden weight gain, which may indicate fluid overload. Water, salt, and balance are not just general recommendations, they are a survival tripod. When properly applied, they allow the body to endure heat waves with greater resilience, ensuring safety and preserving health in an increasingly hostile climate scenario. One of the most practical and efficient resources to ensure the protection of older adults during heat waves is to transform the guidelines into a simple checklist printed and placed on the refrigerator door. This visual board works as a daily reminder, easy to access and consult, both for those who live alone and for family members and caregivers. The goal is to gather in a single list the fundamental actions that need to be carried out at different times of the day, without depending on memory or risk perception. In situations of extreme heat, when the body is already tired and the mind may be confused, having this guide fixed to the refrigerator can literally save lives. The checklist should begin in the morning with essential preventive measures. 1. Drink at least 300 milliliters of water upon waking. 2. Prepare cold meals for lunch. 3. Close curtains and windows facing the sun. 4. Place buckets or damp towels in the main rooms. These 4 actions already create a solid foundation of protection for the rest of the day. Throughout the morning, it is important to include the reminder to hydrate every 30 minutes, even without feeling thirsty, and to organize medications at the right times, avoiding forgetfulness that can become dangerous in the midst of the heat. For the most critical period, between noon and 4 p.m., the checklist should reinforce the need to stay at rest, avoid leaving the house, consume clear and light liquids, and monitor signs of dizziness, headache, or excessively hot skin. At this time, it is also useful to have homemade hydration solution prepared, as it may be necessary in cases of sudden weakness. The next item on the checklist should remind the older adult to reorganize the environment in the late afternoon, opening windows only when the outside temperature is lower than the inside, to encourage cross-ventilation and expel accumulated heat. In the transition to nighttime, the guide should recommend a warm shower to lower body temperature, light cotton clothing, a bottle of water by the bed, and thin sheets instead of heavy blankets. There should also be a highlighted note to avoid heavy meals, alcohol, and caffeinated drinks, as all these factors worsen sleep quality and increase dehydration. The checklist should also include guidance to observe warning signs such as mental confusion, shortness of breath, chest pain, or absence of sweating in intense heat, indicating the need to seek immediate medical attention. This simple, low-cost, and highly impactful resource has the advantage of turning complex recommendations into concrete, visual steps that can be easily followed. To increase effectiveness, the checklist can be colorful, with symbols or icons, making it easier to read even for those with visual difficulties. It can also be adapted according to the reality of each older person, including notes about medications, emergency contacts, and phone numbers of close relatives. Placing this guide on the refrigerator, an unavoidable daily access point, is to transform information into action. The refrigerator checklist works as a survival map within the home itself, protecting lives in every heat wave that has become part of Brazil's new climate reality. No survival protocol for heat waves can be complete without considering the importance of a support network. For older adults, especially those who live alone, the support of family members, neighbors, and health professionals is essential to reduce risks and prevent silent tragedies. Extreme heat is not just a physical challenge, it also requires constant vigilance, and often the older adult cannot, on their own, notice the warning signs or apply all preventive measures. This is where the support network comes in, transforming individual care into collective protection. In the family environment, small actions make an enormous difference. Children and grandchildren can establish a routine of daily contact, whether by phone, messages, or quick visits, just to confirm that the older person is well hydrated and in a safe environment. This simple follow-up makes it possible to identify early symptoms of exhaustion or dehydration that, if ignored, could evolve into serious situations. It is also the family's responsibility to help prepare the house, organizing fans, installing curtains, and reinforcing the availability of fresh water and light foods. These tasks, often simple for young people, can be exhausting for older adults. The neighborhood also plays a strategic role. In communities where residents know each other, creating mutual support groups is an effective solution. Establishing agreements such as knocking on the neighbor's door twice a day or maintaining messaging groups dedicated to monitoring older adults can save lives. During heat waves, when emergencies increase and health services are overloaded, quick local support is decisive. A bottle of water offered at the right time or the early identification of a disoriented older adult can prevent the worsening of a clinical condition. Health professionals, in turn, need to be integrated into this network. Community agents, primary care teams, and even local pharmacies can contribute with guidance, distribution of informational materials, and monitoring of the most vulnerable cases. In some cities, initiatives to open air-conditioned public spaces, such as community centers or churches, function as refuge points for older people without conditions to keep their homes cool. The support network, therefore, is not just familial. It should involve the entire community, creating a web of protection against an invisible and increasingly frequent enemy. Another essential aspect is combating social isolation. Many older adults, out of shame or fear of bothering others, refrain from asking for help even when they are at risk. That is why the support network must be proactive, offering help without waiting for the older person to ask. Simple gestures, such as calling to remind them to hydrate or stopping by to check if the windows are properly closed, convey care and, at the same time, increase safety. When everyone understands that protecting the elderly is a collective responsibility, the impact of extreme heat can be drastically reduced. Thus, the support network transforms the confrontation of heat waves into a shared task. More than individual measures, it ensures that no older person faces the reality of extreme weather alone. Survival, in this context, depends not only on the water one drinks or the shade one seeks, but also on solidarity and collective vigilance. It is the strength of community care that multiplies protection and reduces preventable deaths on days when the heat becomes a declared enemy of health. The heat waves that Brazil is facing in 2025 are not an isolated event, but rather the portrait of a new climatic reality. Research released by INMET and MCTI indicates that the frequency, duration, and intensity of these phenomena tend to increase in the coming decades, driven by global warming and the unregulated growth of cities. For the elderly, this means that extreme heat will no longer be an occasional challenge, but a constant part of daily life, requiring not only emergency adaptations, but also permanent changes in lifestyle and home organization. The near future will be marked by longer summers and hotter nights, with a direct impact on public health. The first point of concern is that the human body does not adapt indefinitely to heat. Studies already show that there are physiological limits of tolerance and that continuous exposure to extreme temperatures increases cardiovascular, renal, and neurological strain. For people over 60 years old, this scenario represents a doubled risk. In addition to the natural fragilities of aging, continuous heat accelerates chronic complications, raises mortality rates, and reduces quality of life. This reinforces the need to transform emergency protocols into everyday habits, such as keeping environments cooler, reinforcing daily hydration, and establishing more frequent medical monitoring routines during heat periods. The near future will also demand greater collective preparation. Governments and municipalities will need to create specific public policies to protect the elderly population, such as opening air-conditioned centers, providing accessible alert systems, and running awareness campaigns aimed at the most vulnerable communities. Urban infrastructure will have to be redesigned, with the expansion of green areas, incentives for painting roofs in lighter colors, and measures to reduce the effects of heat islands. Society, in turn, will have to accept that caring for the elderly during hot days is not only a family responsibility, but also a social commitment that involves all citizens. Another inevitable factor is technology, which will become a strategic ally. From simple ventilation systems to health monitoring apps and body temperature sensors, digital tools can help detect early risks and activate support networks in real time. However, for this to work, access to these resources must also be guaranteed for low-income elderly people, who are the most vulnerable and the least able to invest in cooling appliances or smart devices. If inequality is not addressed, it may further increase the impact of heat waves on those who need protection the most. Therefore, the near future demands a change in mindset. Heat waves are no longer exceptions, they have become part of life. For the elderly, surviving in this new scenario does not depend solely on individual measures, but on the sum of domestic strategies, community support networks, and structured public policies. Extreme heat will remain a real enemy, but information, planning, and solidarity can turn it into a manageable risk. Preparing now will determine not only who will get through the next heat waves safely, but also who will be able to age healthily in an increasingly hotter world.